there was a lot of like debates over that, and even now about like should kids get vaccinated there. So there's a lot that tied into that, and then just also the idea of having to social distance and these putting these like cleared things up to like put it around your desk to where like you're not like sitting right next to somebody, or you are, but you have that little guard thing there. So there's all that that was happening. And then even like you were saying, Robbie, about how there was like maybe a smaller class of students, which I guess could be, good because like you were saying with your brother-in-law, he was able to have I guess more of a connection with each student, because I'm sure dealing with like 30 students, like twice as many, it's a little bit harder to do that. So I could see like the good and bad out of that as well, because yeah, you are able to have a little bit more of a connection, but just the way we interact can be different nowadays, like as far as like putting in like social distancing and like just the way they even do things, like to where even Danielle is talking about, to where maybe even like some people like are hybrid when it comes to doing both. And even for me, like when I was thinking about school, I mean, they have offered like very few online classes back when I was in college, but now I'm sure there's a lot more of that. So and especially now, I'm always seeing commercials on TV about like certain colleges, like South New Hampshire University or something like that, offering like a full online course to where you can get your master's degree in like a certain amount of time, which which actually don't sound like a bad idea. Like if I were to want to get a master, that probably wouldn't be a bad idea, because the whole idea of even going to school didn't seem like, because I was in downtown Birmingham as well, because I went to UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham, and that was traffic definitely, and definitely had some moments there. Like I got robbed at one point.
Oh,
So yeah, so
yeah.
scary, but like during my senior year, but I ended up okay out of that situation. But those kind of things, I guess, are bound to happen regardless of where you go. It can happen at any moment, but still, I guess the idea of like doing school from online or remote like that sounds a lot better. But the only thing that I think feel like could be bad about that is that I did take an online class one time. It was like an economics class, and I ended up not doing as good. And I think it's because I was thinking, oh, this is an online class. Like, I don't have to try as hard. For
Yeah.
some reason, I don't know why I thought that. Like, I shouldn't have to try as hard because it's an online class, and I can just during tests I can like look in the book for my answers, and I think yeah, I ended up not doing as good. Like, I ended up coming out of that class with like a C, which a C is not something I usually like shooting for the A's and B's, of course, and in that case that I did not. So I think maybe like having school online for me I kind of lost focus or motivation to do as good. For some odd reason, that was my personal experience. So yeah, I can see how things have changed both ways. And so yeah, that's a lot has changed even just over these past 2 years, even ever since I went to college back in like 2018 when I graduated. So crazy times. So so actually we are going to move on into the next question, because there's another thing that things have changed in within a certain establishment or organization or building, whatever you want to call it. So the next question I have is, have you seen any changes within the church since COVID?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things, especially when obviously the pandemic hit, more churches started streaming online. And there were, of course, some churches that was already doing that. Especially some of the bigger churches that I would like, tune in for. Like I didn't live in the same state. I'm not able to go to their church. So I will watch their streaming service. I'll watch the rebroadcast on YouTube. So it was super convenient. But once COVID hit and, the physical building, the doors were closed. they started, streaming online so that people can still, have access to the services and, still have that time with God. So I think now, as of today, I think a lot of people are back in person, of course, but then I also still feel like there's a good amount of people that tune in virtually. So I think it just depends on obviously the church, the size of the church. Maybe like some of the larger churches, there still might be a good amount of crowds still tuning in from home just because that's what they're comfortable with. I also saw, as the pandemic started to become, I guess, like less of an impact, I saw some churches do like every other Sunday. Like the church I went to back in Virginia was doing like one Sunday we're in person, the following Sunday we're virtual, something like that for a little bit until they felt comfortable enough for us to say like, all right, we're back in person. And then you can wear your mask if you like to. So, and also too, I feel like it made, churches just get more, I guess, maybe just change how they do certain things, especially some of the more traditional churches. They realize like, oh, I gotta like I gotta get more modern, get up to date with like how other things are going. Like, back then, like I said, some of these modern churches, they might not have been streaming, but because of the pandemic, it forced them to like, all right, let's start recording these services and get online so that we can reach a bigger audience and stuff. So I think things have changed in that way. And I like it. I love that flexibility too, because there's times where even if I don't, want to go in person, I can literally still stay home and have church in my living room, or I can have church in the car. I mean, it doesn't matter, you don't necessarily you don't have to necessarily be in a physical building to still feel that presence of God. You can definitely be anywhere, because I've done it where I can be running, I can listen to church while I'm running. It doesn't matter. So I definitely love that flexibility for sure.
Most definitely. Yeah, a lot more flexibility nowadays. Yeah. How about you, Robbie?
Yeah, I think for me, definitely, the ministry I was volunteering with, we were renting a building pre-pandemic, and so I think in a weird way, the pandemic was actually great. Like, of course, it was a little bit hard transition. Like, we had already been doing a couple things over Zoom, but like, I think kind of what you were saying, it made us like I watched some of our old Zoom stuff from like a couple years back the other night just to like compare. And I'm like, our quality has gotten so much better because of COVID. Because it used to be an afterthought to in person. Like online was always an afterthought of like, oh, there's some people who are out of state that want to join. Let's make a Zoom link for them. But like audio, camera, like everything was like bare bones. And like I think because of the pandemic, um, it kind of forced us to really examine it. And when everyone's online, like you see that like we put a lot of heart and effort into getting better quality, better equipment, and just the improvement of like the community online has drastically improved. And I think not having to rent a building, and then especially like I know Joel, you were talking about traffic. Chicago, I love the city, but I-94 traffic. What should take like if there's no traffic, if you're driving at night, 30 minutes to get into the city from where I'm at. If it's in the middle of the day, I'm looking at like an hour to an hour 45, depending on what time of day I'm trying to drive. And so like for people who used to have to commute to come into service or to come for a small group, even life group type things where you meet at someone's house, like if you're coming across the city, like it was just especially like if you're taking the train, you're looking at 2 hours. And we used like it's crazy to think that that was our normal. Like it was we would spend 2 to 4 hours in a train, in a bus, walking, driving, and you don't realize like how much time that is until you have it back. But also like on the on the flip side, I find it funny because sometimes when you had that like commute, you got there early because you never knew if the bus was going to transfer right. You never knew if the train was going to come. But now it's online. Sometimes you're like, oh, I got 5 more minutes. Oh, I got 2 more minutes. Oh, I'll log in at 11:59. And then you end up like washing the dishes and you're like, oh, I'm late. Like, so I think like one here, like it's a what like kind of even what you were talking about with work, like if you can kind of multitask a little bit. And so like as far as saving time, I think it's been like a beautiful thing. And like for people who had to commute a lot, like financially, like time wise, it's a lot healthier for people. But I think on the offhand, like you get really like I guess relaxed about things because I think like one thing with like meeting in person, I think is you get a little bit more of that reverence. Um, like because sometimes doing service on a computer screen at home, like of course, like it more depends on your heart condition, I guess. Like that, but like it's definitely easier to be in the right state of mind and the right heart when you're in a building with a bunch of people. Like when you're in the atmosphere, it's different than when you're just sitting at home. Like you might have the button up, you might have the PJs down bottom. Like, you might be sitting cross-legged in a bed, not like in a chair. You might be like it's definitely a different experience actually being with people and like worshiping like as a congregation. And so I think it's beautiful as far as like finding a better like balance and like but I think there's always a place for coming together truly like as the people of God like in a physical environment even if it's just for fellowship even if it's to give like there is a beauty in actually coming together but as far as like logistics being on the volunteer side of things I'm like glory to God for going like it made everything logistically much easier but I think there's like I like right now like things are starting to become more hybrid like we still don't have a venue per se and we've actually increased um in people who attend because everything was on Zoom like no one had to worry about oh I have to drive across town so a lot more people started joining a lot more people started attending but we also have the issue now that we don't got a building to put everyone in. So we're meet like but I'm looking forward to the day to be able to like meet because some people I've only met on Zoom. So like even like before I met Joe in person, like for the longest time we talked on Zoom or on like message and like being able to meet someone in person is definitely always a different feeling. So I think I'm excited to meet some people in person that I haven't like I've known for like a year or two and I've never met him. So it'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, most definitely. A lot of big changes have happened for sure within the church. Like, I guess kind of it's the same thing kind of with the whole school and work situation where I can see these changes being being somewhat good and somewhat bad, like
Mm,
for different reasons. I guess for my personal, I guess my personal taste, I guess I should say. Like when it comes to I guess for as far as our church, we have a pretty big church I go to
mm,
and it was we always had like online like
mm,
streaming as well. We've had both, so to where if people that aren't physically able to be there, whether they're traveling or whether they're sick, they are able to watch that. And then we also have our like services on TV as well.
oh,
So like it shows on
that's
our
cool.
like local news, like I think, but it's like a few weeks behind. So like a service that we did maybe like 3 weeks before will show up on that, that 3 weeks later. And so before COVID, we've always had like kind of a remote kind of church service because
Mm,
like as Danielle said, like yes, it's like there is the physical church, but then like also we are the church as well. So like regardless of where we're at, God is there. He's not only in the church, so that's always good to have those moments where we can even praise God even from our
mm,
very houses that we're in right now, our very places that we're living in. So that's
mm,
always a very good like comfort, for sure, and like knowing that and that we don't have to be in church, even though it's
mm,
definitely good. I guess for like me personally, I would prefer to actually be in the church, like in the physical
mm,
church, and being with fellow believers, because
mm,
I feel like my focus is a lot more
mm,
on uh is more on like worshiping God and like getting into the word. And whereas if I was like doing it from home, which I've done it before, and I mean it's nothing wrong with people that doing it from
Mm,
home. But for me, doing it from home, I feel like I'm not as focused on the
mm,
church service. I'm a little bit more like looking around, and
yeah.
I mean I haven't done it before, but I can see myself at some point being on my bed, just like thinking like just watching the service, and I'm thinking like, "Oh, I'm tired," or I may be thinking like, oh, so it's like I don't want to then like my focus kind of like comes off of God, and it's more on like, oh, like
Mm,
a nap sounds good right now, or like I'll
mm,
start thinking of all these other things. So I feel like, personally for me, I would prefer to physically be there just because of that, maybe because of just having more of that focus, and just you can feel God's presence
mm,
anywhere and everywhere. But for me, I feel like just being in God's house, I
mm.
just, I just would prefer that. But and